I'm like distracted. I literally just had my new business cards delivered.
Hold it up. Let's see them.
Hey.
That one was my boyfriend's. Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome sauce.
Pretty rad.
Yeah.
Oh. All right, everybody. Hey, the star of the show is here, Peter Dupuis. What's up, man?
How's everybody doing? Good, man.
Good.
A lot of familiar names on here. Hello, all. Todd, how do you want to attack it today?
Well, first, do you have any funny interview stories? Did anything funny?
The two that I did today were actually very good. I had some good candidates, so I've got no garbage for you.
Well, that's
I've had some less than impressive ones here over the last couple of days, though.
Have you?
Yeah, I kind of feel like the collegiate process or our education system's failing us a little bit these days. What is socially acceptable in an intern application process
That's tough. Hey, real quick, everybody, if you're not talking, please mute yourself because somebody's got some serious background noise that's crushing this whole thing. There we go. Okay.
Silence.
What do you like? What happened?
Oh, just people who clearly don't ask anyone to edit their application essays. People who use acronyms like TTYL when requesting an application.
Oh, good.
Just a lot of, I don't know, I guess a reflection of the fact that most of my candidates are, living on their cell phones, and I don't know. It's just things that I was not permitted to get away with coming out of college at Babson are totally acceptable now. And I guess I'll tell you a story. One of my favorite things that they do at Babson, which I don't believe they do in other places, is that they won't let you walk for graduation until you have gone through this like really easy process of submitting a resume to the Center for Career Services and getting it approved. And so they basically say, hey, once you leave this school, you're going to be an extension of our brand. And we want to make sure that the material you're putting out in the world reflects on us nicely. And so they idiot-proof the process. And that definitely doesn't happen anymore because I'm finding typos in resumes. I'm finding terrible cover letters. I'm finding just kind of a blatant disregard for simple basics like that. And I think at the time I saw it as a huge inconvenience when I was in school, but now in hindsight, I would love to see it become mandatory at all colleges. So just one little thing that I liked.
No, it makes sense though, because if you can't pay attention to that kind of detail, what are you going to do when you actually have to deal with some real shit? So
exactly. I love the turnout today, by the way. It's nice to be the first Q&A, I guess.
Yeah, this is rad, man. Yeah, so I guess let's just open the floor to questions. Whoever wants to jump in and start asking Pete stuff. So just remember, like, not only does this help you get your questions answered now, but it kind of gives Pete the framework to kind of direct the curriculum for the rest of the faction, so you can kind of influence where this goes if you kind of unmute yourself and start talking as soon as I stop talking. Ready, go. No one.
So I have a question.
There we go.
So what advice do you have for someone who's just starting off doing their own company? So I'm not opening a gym, but doing like independent training, online training in terms of like accounting and tracking expenses and like handling money, like the basics that we should really have under our fingers as we get started.
You say we, how big's your team?
Just me. So we being like other people in my situation. But it's just
and is it brick and mortar or are you doing it online?
So I don't have a gym, so it would be like independent training at some other facility and online.
Okay. Well, I don't think it's necessary that you line up like a CRM like MindBody or something like that when you're a one-person show and you're just getting started. I think the entire Google Drive platform is a really good resource with Google Calendar and Notes and Docs, and I mean we do everything through our Google Drive. I'd probably pick up a copy of QuickBooks and kind of manage your numbers. But once you get a little bit further in and the finances start to become a little more complex, a good accountant is like the absolute best. I think you'd hear Conley reiterate that, as I know he's preached that in the past, but keep the system simple. I mean, in a lot of ways, our systems are a reflection of what our our business was in 2007, and it created some pretty big limitations for us down the road because we never expected it to scale as big as it did. But in hindsight, it was appropriate because we just weren't dumping money into expensive resources that we didn't need. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Awesome. Who else has a question?
I can help Caroline. Caroline, I'm Jason. I work out of New York. Before I started here at Ironline about 8 months ago, I was an independent contractor in Manhattan. I did almost exactly what he said. I did QuickBooks for just some clientele that I worked out of buildings for. It just kind of helped me lay everything out. And then I used Google for programming, just Google Sheets. And I was able to send programs and got everybody on some sort of Gmail, and just made everything really super easy. It's the best way I know how to do it, before I kind of got into this management role that I've taken on here. So if you ever want to contact me and have any questions, I'm more than willing to kind of help you out with that if you want.
Cool, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Caroline, one thing I would reiterate, or not reiterate, I'd say for the first time is early on, it's a beautiful thing because you haven't made any mistakes yet as far as how you can kind of compile information and start your systems. There is no such thing as too much information on a client as far as how you document it, right down to not just name, gender, email. I'm talking exactly how they heard about you, what lead funneled them into your business, who they, how they became aware of your business, what sport they play, if they play a sport, who they like to train with when they come, what they mentioned during their onboarding process. I mean, if you can continue to compile really thoroughly detailed client information, you're going to be in a really good position down the road to even revisit people who have fallen off the map a little bit, because clients tend to come and go, and the busier you get, the easier it is to lose sight of that. And when it comes time to try and reactivate them, more information is better as you try and send a personal email or put a call out or something along those lines. I wish I could go back in time and really tighten up the records we have of our clientele, but with 43 or 4,400 people, I've done a really garbage job in that sense.
Cool.
Peter, what would you do with all of that information? Would you put it, plug it into a spreadsheet to try and track, how many leads are coming from where, or how would you kind of compile all that?
Initially, I probably would start with a spreadsheet. If you're managing a newsletter, I think it's a great place to start breaking out your lead so that you can mail on your list in ways that segment the population very specifically. But initially, I'd probably be in an Excel file or a Google Sheet.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
No problem. And again, I'm not a huge I'm not hugely experienced in extracting value from newsletter and that sort of deal. Whereas my business partner Eric, segmenting every newsletter he sends to very specific details or geographic segments of the country or whatever it may be. So if there are other people who have insights on that, I would love to learn more.
Hey Pete, it's Noam. How you doing?
What's up, Noam?
Great to have you back. Really looking forward to this season. I had a question about the way that you kind of distinguish the pay for your coaches. I don't know if it's based on how long they've been with you, the level of certification they have, advanced education, things like that, because it's definitely something that, as my coaches are with me longer, that it's something that I need to kind of show them a bit of a career path. So I'm curious how you guys do it over at CSP.
Well, it's important to note that all of my employees are hourly. So there isn't really a commission-based format with how we operate.
Gotcha.
Because we're filling their schedule for them. They're not doing any selling. They're not focusing on generating leads for us. They're showing up when I tell them to, and they're coaching their asses off during the window of time that they're expected to be on the clock. They do see bumps annually at their reviews, and I definitely have highest paid trainers in relation to, say, the newbies. I've talked probably a fair amount here in some of the videos that I did over the last season for you guys about how we we help incentivize employees to be a little bit more entrepreneurial in nature. And that's by kind of focusing on this personal brand development piece and encouraging them to think strategically about how they could bring ideas to the table. I mean, it's very common for them to come into my office and say, hey, I had this seminar idea, or I had this online programming idea that I think we could bring to our clientele. And we just go from there, and we spitball, and, you know, we'll have a kind of a Q&A informally in the office where we talk about the game plan moving forward. So I have multiple staff members who make more than 50% of their annual income online with the assistance of leveraging the brand. So it's interesting when you start asking about like outlining a career path. For me, I just want to see people up their profile on a industry-wide level while they're on the clock with us, so that they have a little bit more reach, both while they're here and if and when they choose to move on, which I know is going to happen eventually. I'm not looking to pull back on the reins to keep them from developing to a point where they are enticed to leave, because if I do that, I don't extract the best from my coaches. Does that answer your question, Noam?
Yeah, I mean, it answers it partially. I mean, a lot of it's not, I guess it's not really, I mean, it's great how you incentivize and everything, but based, because your coaches are hourly, and mine are commission. So.
Yeah, well, tell me about how you do it down in NYC. I mean, I'm consulting with dozens and dozens of gym owners who are a lot closer to your model than mine. So, and I would assume that there's a couple dozen people on the screen who have an opinion on this for sure, because you guys are all either being comped that way or outlining a comp structure for your employees. So I'd love for a lot of people to chime in on this one, really.
I mean, I've created basically a first to 6 months, and then 6 months to a year, then 1 year to 2 years, and then 2 to 3, and then beyond that, and kind of shown a range of what I pay out. Yep. So that they're, and if they're within that, that the pay is going to be within that range, again, depending on what levels of certifications and how much they've kind of brought to the table. I also incentivize them a little bit with social media. It's been shown to work with some coaches and not to work at all with others, incentivizing them for posting and stuff like that per month. Yep. So that's kind of how I do it, but I don't pay, like, for group fitness, for semi-private, and for private, I pay everything the same. I don't know. I don't see too many coaches that are incentivized by like filling classes, because they're really not, their job really isn't to, I mean, they market you, but that's not really their primary thing, is to market you. It's to provide the good service and great coaching and get repeat people coming back.
Sure. How big is your team now?
6.
Okay. And you said that there's everything up to a 3+ scenario. What's your longest tenured coach?
Right now, I had a massive turnover, probably about like less than a year ago. So the one that I've had the most has probably been like a year with me. Okay. Right now.
So it's kind of a pipe dream for them right now, touching that 3+ comp structure. Are you holding back right now just because you feel like they need to pay their dues, or would you be willing to bump someone forward if they're a rock star?
Well, that's what I'm probably going to be doing this week, is actually probably bumping someone up who's shown really, really great initiative, and has actually been holding back a little bit on like their positivity, because they felt like they were being a little bit underpaid. And I recognized that, and I had a title like this, a crucial conversation. And some good things came out. So that was good that I confronted that situation.
Sure. I was going to say, you need to take the MFF approach and cut that conversation off right away, get in front of it.
Yeah.
When you dropped the crucial conversation line, I knew you were thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this from people here? There's a lot of people who experience this comp structure even more than I am.
One more thing I'd just like to add really quickly is, like, also, obviously it's the environment. People are probably willing to be paid a little less if they really like the environment that you're creating. So that's really important, because if people are always about the money, they're going to the raise will be a temporary thing, and then they'll want more.
Sure.
So it's like,
well, and I talked about that this weekend at the Fitness Summit. I gave a presentation, 5 of the best and 5 of the worst decisions we've made in 10 years of doing this. And I believe my number 2 best decision was what I titled fearless talent development on the slide. And it speaks to exactly what you're saying. And as I said, I want to create coaches that are so good that I have to lose them. But the reason we don't lose them and we have so much retention with our team is that they feed off of each other, and they're not so concerned with stepping away from the brand as they are from stepping away from each other and the conversations that are happening on the training floor and the discussions during in-service. Like this morning's in-service, I had a full team. I had all 6 of our interns, and the discussion spilled from what was supposed to end at 12 on up till close to 12:30 because people were really into it, intellectually stimulated. And that's a difficult thing for this crew to step away from, because it kind of drives their content creation, and it drives a lot more than just how they function on the training floor. It drives a lot of earning potential outside of our space as well. So I 100% agree with what you're saying. And I think if you were to ask Tony Gentilcore what the hardest thing for him to leave was, he'd tell you it would be his colleagues.
Cool.
Pete, can I jump in here?
Yeah, hell yeah.
So this is something that I feel like we kind of broke, Noam, here with our culture is like this, and I'm stealing this from Andy McCloy this weekend, but there's like this culture of competition over collaboration. I think when you make a pay structure that is commission-based, right? Like, so in my experience, if I had someone that didn't fit my schedule, I wouldn't be as incentivized to still sign them up for the business necessarily. Or like, you know, I mean, I could give like a bunch of different examples, but what we did, and before I go into this, I can say this is the most common question I get asked when I do coaching calls. I think because I own a business, a lot of people ask me these types of questions through Strength of Action, like all the time. I just did a coaching call with Kirk Adams yesterday, and I know he's going to be asking, if he didn't already, Pete, he's going to be asking you the same questions. And what we did to break it here was we literally just made an atmosphere of collaboration over competition. So we don't do commission. What we did was we just figured out that one, we went away from pay per session. We have everyone on like a flat membership price, depending on how many days a week they're going to train. So based on that, we can budget. We know what we have coming in, and we were able to pay people essentially a salary. And then that way people have this comfort level of knowing like, hey, this is what I get paid. There's no more stress if I need to hit a certain number, which you could think maybe that would drive a little bit of complacency. We've actually found the complete opposite. And then with this, their pay is so far above minimum wage that we have no worries of ever going under minimum wage for the part that I'm about to say next. That this then allowed us to do a lot more. We don't have no coach here has their own clients. All of the clients are the gym's clients. The people can come in and train anytime. And then because of the way that we've standardized things, the experience shouldn't be any different from coach to coach. My reason for saying that is that we have it set up where coaches can take unlimited paid vacation, which sounds absolutely crazy, but there's a little bit of a catch to it. The catch is that you need to find someone to cover your shift. So you're constantly, if you're going to do this, you're trading shifts. So you're saying, hey, I'm planning on doing this cruise to Bermuda this summer. I'm going to be out for a week. Would anyone be willing to pick up my hours? And it can be a mix of people. Obviously someone's not just going to work like double the hours for a week, but people will work together to cover your hours. We've never had to say no to someone based on this. People are always willing to step up and make more time working to cover for someone else, knowing that that will be paid forward to them, or that they're essentially paying it forward so that someone would do that for them down the road. And then the last thing I'll say on that is that, interestingly enough, we have employees that we have to kick out, meaning like you have to go on vacation because it's been 3 years. No one takes advantage of it. We don't have anyone that's trying to take off multiple times a week. We haven't had anyone try and take off more than 1 week in a year, ever. So my point in all this is just that whenever we went away from, and we never did it here, whenever I got away from places where I was before, this competition of compensation, shit just works out a whole lot better. So I don't know if there's much you can take away from that. Everyone that I talk to, the hard thing is if you're doing one-on-ones, if you're doing personal training, it's hard to pay a flat rate because people need to be getting trained in order for money to be coming in. But
yeah, Noam's in a hyper competitive market, so yeah. It's tough to apply the concepts learned here at BSP and drop them into a personal training market in Manhattan. But I think the key is just don't be afraid to properly and heavily compensate a rock star if you know that they're the real deal early. Don't get so caught up in some sort of timeline of employment. You got to keep the best, and there's just too many options out there for them to move on to someone else. And you said you already got burned with a huge staff turnover recently, so take care of your people. I want to say one thing to build off of what Chris said. I love the model there. We use the exact same model. Nobody owns any clients. The problem is if you're not careful about how you roll clients into the model, they believe they are owned by staff members or they own certain coaches. And so in the onboarding process, when you bring in clients, it's imperative that they are forced to engage with a lot of staff members early on. Because if they come in and we say, all right, the evaluation is going to be with Greg Robbins and he's going to handhold start to finish, that client comes back on day 2 and they say, I'm back, where's Greg? And we're like, nope, that's not how this works. That's a much more difficult habit to break on day 2 than it is on day 1. So what we do is Greg will handle the assessment and screening process. He'll take them through kind of our interpretation of an FMS. He might talk about the injury history review. He might have an intern in the room involved in the process. And then he'll get to a point where he'll have the intern take that client over to the warm-up area and he'll say, John here is going to take you through your foam rolling and some mobility stuff. And while that happens, he'll write up a small workout for that day. And he'll come back and he'll say, hey, John, I want you to go introduce so-and-so to Nancy. Nancy's going to teach him how to trap bar deadlift. And then Nancy's going to hand you off to someone else and you're going to learn how to do a proper lunge or whatever it is. And by the time the client leaves the gym that day, they've had touch points with at least half of our staff. And when they come back in, there's no concerns about hand-holding. We kind of get that problem out of the way early and they embrace this group supervision concept. So just if you're entertaining the idea of sliding into that course of action, it's wonderful. It's great for scaling your business. It's just there are huge, huge potholes that you can hit along the way because it's clients who get perturbed if they feel like they're not getting ample supervision, and then it's parents. That's a whole different story. Parents calling the follow-up saying, my kid said nobody specific coached them today, and that's a headache I deal with somewhat regularly.
Pete, do you roll out that idea right away that it's a semi-private setting before they've even gone into their assessment so they know that there's a chance they're going to be working with multiple coaches or maybe, be one of 3 athletes working with a coach that day?
Yeah, I make sure that people know that the evaluation is – I use the terminology one-on-one format for the evaluation because it is. You will be one-on-one with one of our staff members. There's never a time where you're in a group supervision format on the day of an assessment. But that one staff member is going to shift from one location in the gym to the next or one exercise to the next. But I can ensure that there will be eyes on you and someone engaging with you all the time. The way that we address the training beyond the evaluation, it's up to me to sell it clearly on the front end. So when I'm explaining our service model, I have to be very clear about our client to coach ratio. I usually tell them that the training experience is pretty coaching intensive during the first couple of days of a new program. But our goal is to make clients so self-sufficient that they don't need to be taught how to foam roll every time they come through the door. And honestly, clients get to a point very quickly where they pride themselves on self-sufficiency. So they're almost offended if you say, hey, I'm going to go get a coach to teach you how to foam roll your quads. And they're like, get the hell out of here. I got this. The other thing is we have a kind of onboarding material that I send off. So when someone books an evaluation, I send off what you can expect document along with our waiver and health history paperwork. So when they're filling that material out and bringing it along, they're getting hit with answers to all of my frequently asked questions. And it gets ahead of those issues with supervision questions or how much am I going to see Eric Cressy during the process. I answer those before they can ask them, if you know what I mean. And I'll load that document somehow to the Faction Drive here. I'll make sure that you guys can all see just what that one-page PDF looks like. And maybe there's something of use that you guys can grab from it.
Thanks, man. You can send it to me. I'll upload it for everybody.
Cool.
Or I'll selfishly keep it and pretend like I'm going to upload it.
Send it to you right now while it's on my mind.
Who else has questions?
I got one.
Yep.
Go for it.
So in the one video you were talking about mistakes you guys have made before, or with the at CSP. One of them was rolling out like that 6-week deal and structure on it.
Mhm.
And without being kind of the thought leader in your area, you know, kind of the foremost expert on that stuff.
Yes.
How would you, which I don't know, maybe you guys already went and did it. Like, how would you leverage yourself locally to do something like that? Because I think most of us are in some sort of situation like that, whether it's training gym pop or even athletes or something, is that we are, I mean, nobody's traveling from Maryland to come train with me for 6 weeks.
Mhm.
Like, if they're not within like 10 minutes of the gym, they're not coming.
Sure.
So how would you leverage like local media, like TV, newspaper, radio, and social media together to really set yourself apart in there?
I think it starts with delivering a really tight experience to maybe a small, tight-knit group. And one of the mistakes we made was thinking that we were going to scale something that didn't exist really quickly. So an example being the summer program we're launching, which I also spoke about in the program or in one of the videos, where we're going to cap it at 20. And it would have been easy for us to be like, we want to get 100 college athletes, but we would have fucked it up. You know, we just wouldn't deliver the really quality hands-on experience. So I personally would treat this like a 6-week lesson where we way over deliver. We document the shit out of it. Like I'm taking a marketing intern for this summer for the elite baseball summer program I mentioned, and they're going to be on field and in the gym with the athletes with a camera essentially rolling all the time. And if you think of like kind of how Gary Vee documents his life, that's my objective with this summer program. I would kind of treat it that way if I were doing this 6-week program again. And even if it's just 6 people who sign up, I'd way over deliver. If I had to, I'd build in, you know, free nutrition or whatever it is to make sure that I see the results I want. And then I'd splash it all over Facebook with strategic Facebook advertising. The other thing that we've had some luck with is just identifying opinion leaders in the community. And one of the best moves we made was getting into the Chamber of Commerce locally. And so right now we've got a new email list that we're going to be mailing on through the local Chamber of Commerce. We've got bigger groups attending charity strength camps. We've got, you know, just kind of getting our hands into the community a little more than we were in the past, because we've leaned so hard on being a destination training facility, kind of owning the baseball niche, that we lost sight of how important it was to capture this local audience and be seen as like an actual like industry leader in our immediate area. And it's time to build back. But I didn't mean to imply that it was a completely failed endeavor.
Yeah. Just kind of relative to what you're normally used to when you put an offer out for something for like baseball, where people are like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, I got way too complacent. I take that for granted all the time and continue to. The other mistake I made, and I don't know if I mentioned it in that video, is I didn't get buy-in from my team before I rolled out the program. So what I did was I went to the MFF event, and Fisher gave an awesome presentation on transformation challenges. And I came back on like the last day of February, and I was like, we're going to be quiet in 3 weeks. Like, fuck it, let's roll this out on April 1st. And I started to line up the details, and all I did was basically drop a bunch of assignments on my team. And the coaches weren't interested. They weren't part of the kind of the creation process of rolling out like a game plan or the agenda for how we were going to attack it. They were just checking off checks on my checklist. And what happened was I had a bunch of disengaged employees, and I don't blame them in hindsight because I didn't bring them into the discussion initially. I just came back all hyped up like anyone would be coming out of a Mark Fisher presentation. And I was like, we're going to do this. We're going to kill it. And we didn't, because the team, I just didn't get as much energy out of them as I could have, because it was my agenda, not theirs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay.
I hope that answers your question, Trey.
No, yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of the way we were leaning, was sticking mainly with social media and stuff for doing stuff like that. We've been running more like boosted free content, just like the blog posts and stuff like that, just to make sure we're more visible.
I'd be consistent with it too.
Yeah.
Like don't boost 3 things this week and then disappear for 2 weeks.
Yeah. My goal is just 2 a month.
Okay.
I know I could probably do more than that, but I'm like, I can blog twice a week, every week, and do this, and I won't do it, and then it'll turn into that exact situation. So my goal is just twice a month. Write some blogs like relevant to the stuff people talk about when they come in the gym for the first time, or stuff like that. Like the last one I put out was a little over a week ago, and it was like why we love beginners, because we always get the I got to get in shape before I go to the gym shit.
Yep.
So,
well, in our experience, video drives a lot more leads than the blogs, kind of the written content.
mhm.
So let that why I love beginners be in the description of a video of a beginner executing something. So, I mean, it could be someone doing goblet squats at your gym and feeling like they're in a safe environment, but the visuals that come with the videos drive so many more leads and kind of like buy-in from people in our area for us. And I'm not trying to discredit blogging, because I think it's really nice to have that information to fall back on as people ask you questions, and you need to kind of add some credibility to your message. But if you really want to get the locals to be all in with kind of what you're selling in these programs, they need to see the gym in action, because the people who say I got to get in shape to come to the gym are the people who are afraid of the gym.
Yeah, I'm horrible at like shooting video. I get like the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I could have shot awesome video here, and here. Never thought about it in the moment. Like, it's just never been something I was like real proficient at or interested in. And there's a lot of times it just made our clients seem uncomfortable. It's like, hey, can I get a video of this? And like, I don't think so. So I just kind of stopped there for a while, because I'm like, don't think about it. But yeah,
kind of, I don't want to call it fraudulent, but there are times where I'll grab an intern, you know, if I need to appeal to a bigger portion of the female community, I might grab someone like Lana and say, hey, I need a female in the gym being instructed by Frank right now. Come on out with a video, and I'll fabricate something if I need to a little bit. It doesn't mean that we can't deliver the service that we're pitching on. It just means that I'm creating kind of a strategic visual of what I want people to experience here.
I gotcha. Yeah, because I've always tried to just do it organically. Be like, I just got to catch them in the moment. And then you start whipping out a camera, and they just stop what they're doing and look at you like, fuck is that?
Yeah, that always starts with permission from us. Typically, if we're going to do it, we'll say at the start of a training session, like during foam rolling or something like that, we'll say, hey, we're looking to get some photos of today's training session. Is there anybody who would rather not be involved? And if someone raises their hand, we say, hey, no problem. I'll stay out of your area. And usually people are pretty open to it. And I always also reinforce that with the message that I'm not posting anything without the client signing off on it. So once they hear that, they're all pretty cool with it, because then they want to see their exercise documented. And if they're going to nix it, fine. But at least they give me a shot at it.
Cool.
But the other thing is, I learned a lesson from one of our clients, AJ. He runs this really fascinating company. It's a bat mug company, and you might have seen us pimp it on social before. What he does is he'll put a video up, and he'll see organically how it performs. And if it surprises him a little bit with its reach, he boosts the shit out of it. And he's got 250,000 view posts that he spent $40 to promote, just because he found out the ones that kind of stuck with his audience. So experiment all the time in an unpaid format. And when you see a little surprise bump, push it right then and there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I can do that. Thank you for the idea. Like I said, I've always just tried to do it organically and like surprise them as we go through it. But yeah, actually stopping before the session saying, hey, we're looking to do this, and let them.
Sorry.
I'll give that a shot, see if I can't get a little better buy-in.
Oh, no problem. Sorry, I thought that beeping was someone else. It was me. The other thing is, pick your favorite. I mean, the people that you think do it best, and just emulate. I mean, every bit of advertising or social that you see from us, it's just a reflection of something that I swiped from someone else. I mean, I'm not plagiarizing, but I'm grabbing people's look and feel and font and, like all the time. Every single thing I post, if you pointed at it and you said, where do you get that? I could probably point back at the social post from someone else, probably from a different industry, that I tried to recreate. So
Gotcha.
imitation is the sincerest form of flattery in this case.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, happy to help.
Pete, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
You just kind of touched on it with the Chamber of Commerce, but in the past you've wrote about winning locally before you win globally. And I was just curious what you're doing now on a local level. You kind of touched on it with the Chamber of Commerce that is working, and then likewise kind of the opposite. What did you do that you thought would work and then totally just was a waste of your time or effort or money or whatever it was?
I'd have to put some thought into the what failed on us outside of that 6-week program that I mentioned. But what's working right now, I don't think Duffy's on this right now, but I'm going to give him some big props because he's taken a program that had 19 people in it, and I think we have 44 or something, and we're in 14, 15 weeks. He's more than doubled the program. I haven't given him any resources, legitimately have not given him anything. And the difference is consistency. He doesn't have any bad days. And that's where we have faltered in the past. We've had coaches that don't bring the same personality or drive to every training session every single day. And when it's an inconsistent message and environment, that's when people start falling off. And so huge credit to him because the exact same kind of obnoxious Frank that you get on here in the Q&A is the same version that everybody gets in warm-ups. And while he's teaching them how to do their hip cars or whatever the hell he's forcing down people's throat that day, it's consistent. So on the most basic organic level, it's the client experience. Like if you took an audit of yourself, do clients feel like they're getting a really upbeat, positive coach every time they come through the door? Or are they hearing you bitch because your 2-year-old kept you out overnight, sort of a deal? And we've seen both, and it's really impacted our numbers.
Have you done anything to regulate that, or do you find that it like you talk about with your coaches and their environment, it kind of self-regulates with your coaches kind of keeping each other accountable to make sure that they minimize the number of bad days or bad training sessions that they bring to the floor?
Yeah, we're really good at mutual accountability with our afternoon sessions, like our standard model where the whole team's kind of killing it with the baseball community. The problem is when you run our strength camps, you're on an island, right? You're really early mornings. You're there with an intern, but there's no one there to kind of, give you a kick in the ass and say, hey, that was not your best. But we're all over it in the afternoons. And I think that's why we've had an opportunity to kind of capture so much market share here, even locally and globally with this baseball segment, because our coaches really won't tolerate shitty attitudes or bad days from their peers. And so it kind of depends on the dynamic you have with your team. And I think Chris made a good point, or Andy made a good point, I guess, over the course of the weekend. And that's that if the comp structure or the organizational structure isn't one that fosters serious teamwork, then nobody gives a shit about who's having a bad day. Because if anything, it just creates an opportunity for them to grab clients. I have former interns. We have a number of former interns who are working together at Equinox in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. And I routinely hear stories about one losing clients to another because of attitude issues. And so if you're in an environment where everybody's chasing comp through a performance-based comp structure, then those people are ripe for the picking. You almost want to see them do a shitty job because you're next in line to grab clients. And that's just not the way it works here, since everybody's, pulling for the collective whole. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But Casey, I'm going to put some thought into that because I'm certain that I can give you some actual initiatives that, things that we've done, strategic outreach with the community, and I'm going to circle back on it for you.
Yeah. So I think the idea of winning globally is what everyone, I think, initially jumps at without the idea, as you've talked about, they kind of miss the whole idea of winning locally first. And
Sure.
That's just what I was going to touch on.
Yeah, and that comes into the establish your systems before worrying about your hashtags,
Yeah.
Your Instagram or retweets or whatever the hell it is. That doesn't really do anything to drive business because you can't segment your Twitter following by who's within a 10-mile radius as far as who's going to hear what you have to say. So at my presentation this weekend, I explained we went 293 days before our website went live when we started our business. We had 0 web presence. We didn't embrace Twitter until it was almost 4 years old. We didn't get on Instagram until 2014. We were offline for all intents and purposes, But during that 293 days, we added 239 new clients and coached over 5,300 training sessions with no web presence. And all we were doing was fine-tuning the client experience. So all of this really comes back to just cleaning up the customer experience more than anything. And word of mouth just spins out of control. And Duffy's leaning hard on word of mouth right now. It's all he's got.
Pete, I'd be interested to hear what you come up with too, because I know it's a little different us being a PT clinic, but I know that as we expand, my boss is trying to look at other places for us to open another site in, because we're just too small right now. That one of the things is we want to try reaching out to some of the local teams and athletes and work more with them. So I know it might be slightly different, but I think it might be helpful for me as well to hear, what you come up with for that.
Well, I can definitely speak to bringing teams through the door, because we are, with this baseball community, there's a big like summer baseball and kind of AAU type component to what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we've definitely mastered the art of getting in front of teams and getting them to pay attention to the message and give us an opportunity to sell to them. And we do that a couple ways. Like, for example, if it's in our quiet season and I can spare a coach or two, I'll reach out to a program director during their tryouts and I'll say, hey, would you like us to send 2 coaches out to warm up your guys entirely free of charge? We'll just make sure you don't have any injuries on the first day of your tryouts. We'll talk to them about arm care protocols.
Okay.
For them, if they can send a newsletter to the parents of all these kids who are trying out and say, we've outsourced it and we're bringing in some Cressy Sports Performance coaches to talk arm care to your kids, everybody wins. And at that point, what we'll usually do is we'll pass around a sign-up sheet and we'll say to the guys like, hey, throw your name and email address on the back of this business card or these index cards. At the end of today's training session, we're going to pull a name or 2 from the hat and we're going to give out a free evaluation or a month of twice-a-week training. And it just builds the list and gives us leads. And we email everyone who didn't win and we say, hey, sorry I didn't win, but just wanted to make sure you understand what we do here. Here's a document that outlines our training model and our pricing structure. Let us know how we can help. Nobody spent $1 on that as far as generating those leads. And all we did was establish credibility, because we get out there and we teach those kids how to stay healthy. The parents love us because they're afraid their kids are going to get hurt. The kids like us because they want to train where the pros train. And the coaches like us because it makes them look good, because they're looking out for the long-term health of their athletes. The second thing we do is open houses. And so we'll just reach out to a coach and we'll say, we'd love to host an open house for your athletes and their parents. If you're interested, we'll do typically we shoot for 7:00 on a Wednesday, because it doesn't overlap with any of our women's powerlifting group and it's a quiet night typically. And we'll just say, come on in and we'll do a tour of the facility, Q&A with the athletes, and we'll do an arm care demo and we'll show how we assess an athlete to start an off season. And the kids and the parents come in and they kind of are enamored by the space, and we just try and be as credible as possible and informative, and we don't ask for any sales there. For those people, we'll say, hey, if you want more information, my business card's at the top of the desk. Call us at any point. Please let us know how we can help. And we'll do the same deal. We'll auction something off if people, maybe we'll give away T-shirts or New Balance shoes or whatever it is. But we're not hammering people with a sales pitch. There's no one-day offers, close business before they leave. We're pretty low-key about that. We just want to Gary V type style, just jab, keep over-delivering. And then when we ask for a sale, it's down the road after we've been given a bunch of free advice. I'd imagine that would work with your community.
Yeah, Dave was saying too, they have worked with some teams in the past, just not anything consistent. So he does have already some contacts, and he did say that, when we do start, we will likely, and should expect to do some things for free. So we were all, on board with that. So I think it's kind of more of a when rather than if.
Sure.
Thank you.
Happy to help.
Pete, I had a quick question for you.
Yes.
So you were talking a little bit about the autonomy and trying to get kids to be able to foam roll and et cetera on their own. But how much autonomy do I really want to give a 13-year-old kid, right? I don't necessarily have the same exact model. I'm more of an 8-to-1, 9-to-1. And I'm running times where not every kid has the same program, but there are certain warm-ups that are individualized based on a screen or what have you. But do I really want a kid to be totally self-sufficient at 12 or 13 years old in the gym, or do I really want to have a little bit more of a finger on the beat as far as like weight selection and X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, I think you earn the right to have that autonomy. So I wouldn't say that my goal is to every 13-year-old completely fly solo. The way that we attack it is we'll have interns kind of circling the warm-up area. So in theory, there are eyes on everyone. But the other thing to keep in mind is that 13 is about as young as we start. We don't go any lower than that. And we don't get super aggressive with like really complex or detailed programming strategy with that community. So it's very easy to make a 13-year-old autonomous if they're executing the basics. They're kind of learning the foundations of our program. I agree with you. As the group size gets bigger, I think supervision is pretty important because those kids can kind of spin out of control and distract each other as it is. And if anything, the intern the warm up just gets ignored.
Right.
So for me, when I say I want autonomous clients, I'm speaking more to the late high school, collegiate, professional population.
Okay.
And I count on my coaches to use their discretion as to who needs a little more hand-holding and who doesn't, and they all have a very good feel for that. I think you pick that up over the course of the internship when you're kind of redirected toward certain clients. And Lana, do you mind chirping in on this and speaking to how we manage the expectations for grabbing young athletes' attention in the warm-up area, and as far as kind of assuming who's autonomous and who isn't? Lana being a former intern of ours. You want to talk on that one? You're muted.
Yeah, I just have really bad connection because I'm outside of Starbucks in my car.
We can circle back to it later if that's not good.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think Frank could speak to that too. Oh, speaking of Francis, get out of here. You can say hi to everybody?
Where are you?
Frank's gonna answer. We're here.
What are we answering?
PJ asked.
I asked about autonomy for 13-year-olds. Like how much do you want them to be able to do stuff on their own? Like I get like the flow of the gym or the flow of the workout. Like, hey, I warm up and then I do mini band steps and then I do X, Y, or Z. But like as far as like, I don't necessarily want a 13-year-old to be like, no, dude, I got this. You can go over there. Like I'm good. Like I want to be able to have a little bit more of a say as far as like, okay, well, go up 5 pounds or hey, go down 5 pounds or whatever. You know what I mean?
That's definitely the big thing with the 13-year-olds is that they'll just stay with like 95 pounds like a trap bar deadlift. In regards to autonomy, some of them are very easy. Like they're intrinsically motivated and they'll get after it on their own. But like most of them that I've seen is like you have to be on top of them. Like, hey, that looked pretty easy. Add to that. And then they'll do it. Otherwise, they're just going to go through the motions. So
yeah. So Goldilocks method, not too much, not too little, just right.
Pretty much. Yeah.
All right.
Like Todd always says it like positive regard, especially with the kids that are like pretty quiet. Like eventually they'll open up to you as long as you're like always, hey, that was good, this was good, so on and so forth. So that's what I've seen so far.
All right. Speaking of which, I got to go train them. Thanks, guys.
PJ, wait a second. Do you have Do you have 5 seconds?
For you, I have 6.
I knew you'd say that. One thing that works really well to get kind of that buy-in and let them have some autonomy that they'll actually start to listen to you as well is give them ownership over something. Like help them make a choice some early part of the warm-up. So let's say you're doing some kind of jump training or whatever it is. Let them pick. And when you can start to do that, they start to take ownership over things a little bit better. And then when you get to weight selection and things like that, they have more buy-in and they actually start to listen a little bit better. So where you can institute some level of choice, give them some choice.
Okay. Great.
All right. See you, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
How'd that get into a fitness business Q&A?
I said we like to create autonomy with our clients as far as like warm-ups, stuff like that goes.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Anyone else?
Pete,
I gotta. Oh,
go ahead.
I have a low-key question for Frank, so mine can wait.
Earlier in the conversation, you talked about some of your trainers that do online training. What kind of guidance do you give them to that? And like how as far as structure and different things like that?
forgive me, I didn't see who asked that question just because I got to scroll through a couple screens here. We don't, so I don't personally give a bunch of guidance so much as we provide some resources that they can lean on. So we have our exercise video database here at the gym that is essentially proprietary information, but our staff is allowed to use it to build their own personal business. Beyond that, my rules are really just restricted to professionalism in the realm of, reflecting nicely on our brand. I don't have rules as far as who they're allowed to work with online or anything like that. They can film all the video they want in our gym and use it to sell with that distance-based clientele. They can use all the resources that we have here all the time. It's just, for me, I just want to make sure that they're not saying anything offensive on the internet or, carrying themselves poorly in a professional setting that's going to come back to me. Frank might be able to speak to that a little bit too with the distance-based programming, because he's got a couple of clients and he's pretty in tune with what the rest of the team is doing. Because I mean, Tony B runs a great business online as an extension of his time here.
Yeah, they do a much better job than me. I personally am not like crazy. I don't want to go that route with what I do from a training standpoint. I'd rather train people in person. But in regards to what Tony B and Greg do a really good job of is they have a lot. I mean, Lana is one of their clients. They refer pretty much through their group. So they know their niche. They're all powerlifters for the most part. So for general fitness, that more of the people that I work with, it's a lot harder to get that person in an online coaching realm and trying to keep them consistent, because the distance that's in between us, I can't really create the same motivation I can in person. Whereas someone who seeks them out from a powerlifting standpoint, they know what they're getting themselves into. They're just looking for a routine, and they're helping them, keeping them accountable because they're specialists at what they do. So,
and we try and have pretty much an open door policy in the sense that if they want to talk about what they're experimenting with, be it in their online community or their personal brand development, they can spend time in my office or in Eric's office, and we're learning it right there with them. So it's more just a collaborative approach to how we're building these businesses and kind of talking about what's worked for us and what hasn't. And I think that the kind of the unified team concept that we've talked about a bunch so far here in this conversation comes right back to that. I mean, any bit of downtime, these guys are talking about the content they're creating, what their next idea is for their site or their online clientele. That it's all very collaborative.
Pete, what do you say to your guys about their social media posts? Is there like an actual in-print dictum about how they're supposed to behave, or is it just like, hey, don't be a fucking idiot?
Duffy's going to speak to that a little bit. We, with each passing day, feel like it's probably becoming appropriate that we have an on-paper social media policy. I really don't want to get to a point where I'm micromanaging people's content on that level. However, I don't think Duffy was here 2 days as a full-time employee when Eric asked him to change his Fix Your Shit Sunday post, because he definitely has a firm rule, no foul language in the postings that are directly tied to the business. And so we ask that people keep it relatively clean in that sense. And the other thing is we ask that they do us the favor. Duffy, is the volume on out there?
No, it's muted.
Sorry, I'm looking at the office outside of my space. I can see because Frank's got his computer open. We also ask that they kind of do us the favor of tagging our business. So if we're going to provide the venue and the equipment and the clients for you to kind of generate all this content, our simple request is a CSP family hashtag or a reference to the program in question. And we treat it as collaborative because we're all kind of mutually trying to push each other's following forward. But I do what I can to not micromanage content. However, I do share people's content. So on Fridays, I try and repurpose something from Frank. On Mondays, I do what we call Mom and Nance Monday. And there are times where they'll raise their hand and say, I'd like you to share this piece of content, and we'll nix it. And we'll say, we're not necessarily in line with that approach, or the execution recorded in there. And so Eric definitely micromanages the quality of the movements that we're showcasing. That's for sure.
Okay. So it's just all like content related to business. Like that's the only place where you guys will chime up and say like, meh. So like if someone posted something that's on their Facebook or Instagram that's just like generally controversial or questionable in taste, you guys don't mess with that? Like even if
we have two questions you have to ask yourself when you make a post. Would I be comfortable with the parent of a 14-year-old seeing what I'm putting up? Would I be comfortable with the general manager of a Major League Baseball organization seeing the content I'm putting forward?
Gotcha.
If that is a no, then we'd ask that you not push forward. But I'm sure that those rules have been violated a number of times, and I chose not to attack it. But we do ask that be the mentality that they take into their social media strategy.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Thanks,
It's
man.
shocking how much our clients track our stuff. People you wouldn't expect. I mean, sometimes I'll have a parent say, hey, I love that article you shared in your Friday 4. And I'm like, why is a dad of a 13-year-old reading the newsletter from the business director at our gym? It's because Eric shared a blog I wrote once in his stuff to read, and that guy decided to pop an email in when the email request came up for the newsletter. And next thing you know, I've got to be careful about the language I'm using about manipulating parents into buying our services. And so it's amazing how much of a reach all of these different platforms have that we don't even realize.
Yeah. See, that's my concern is like the I don't know what word I want to use, but you know, we service a lot of government workers and government contractors, and we've had certain coaches express distaste with certain aspects of things and express things in a really like a way that certainly doesn't align with my values and makes me angry, but I get angry about a lot of stuff. So it's just, where do you draw the line on that? Because it's like, I very much value free speech, but at the same right, it's like at this point, you know, you are an employee of this business and everything that you do reflects on the team around you. So it's just, I don't know. I've talked to Fisher about it too. And like, where do you draw that line? And he's like, he doesn't. So I was like, well, let me ask Pete, you know?
Yeah, we do kind of, I mean, if you're to ask Eric or myself what our personal social media strategy is, we'll tell you we don't talk politics or religion.
Yeah.
And it's not because we're not advocates for free speech. It's because we know that any given post theoretically could eliminate 50% of the population for you.
Sure.
And I just don't really care for my political beliefs to drive my earning potential at this moment in time, because I'm not talking about being a one-man show here. I'm talking about the fact that if I went out and blasted Trump or went the other way, I'm hurting the earning potential of my entire team.
Exactly.
So I have to have a little bit bigger picture approach in that sense. And I think there are certain social platforms where you can be a little bit more aggressive with it. But for us, we just take why create that headache for ourselves here? Because what are we accomplishing by starting those arguments on our like Cressy Sports Performance Facebook page or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not even anything. It's just on personal pages and stuff like that. But it's like, I know that like all of our clients, you know, follow us and they all know what we do. And it's like you said, people come and say, hey, I read that article that you wrote for Strength Faction. It's like, why the fuck are you reading Strength Faction articles? You know what I mean? But that's just.
But they are.
Yeah, exactly. That's the reality of it. It's like there's eyes on everything. So it's just like, with, you know, trying to, you know, I very much, it's just tough for me to draw that line about where do I make a decision on this or a rule or policy or anything like that, because I'm very much an advocate of free speech, and I'm no way in favor of censoring anyone. But it's just like, if you fuck us, like I'll break your neck too. So I think it's tough for me to kind of draw that line. You know?
Yeah, and we all, or not we all, a great deal of the people in this group are taking care of youth athletes in some capacity.
Yeah.
And the way that you think about service providers as it relates to your kids, that's a different ballgame. And so if you're handling yourself unprofessionally on the internet and a parent decides to do a little bit of an audit of the people that he's giving his money to, it ends there.
Yeah.
So and we're all just so accessible because since all of us are trying to drive our business forward here, we're making ourselves pretty much public profiles. We're trying to be as accessible as possible. And so we got to be careful about that double-edged sword. And for me, my lane is business posts and pictures of my kids. Sorry, I'm obnoxious with that piece, but it's not offensive or controversial. It's just, it's a little bit vanilla, but it works for me.
Totally. No, I get it, man.
But I'm happy to sit down over a drink with you guys and argue politics all night long. I just won't do it with you on the internet.
As well, you shouldn't. So, cool.
Pete, my question would be the flip side to what Todd's saying. What if you're a part of somewhere that's actually produces really poor content? And Lana, you can probably speak to this one as well. And like they're asking, like on the one hand, you kind of want to get that good information out there, right? But like I don't want to attach my name to that crap. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know. What would you say?
When you say really poor content, do you mean poorly constructed content, or do you mean incredibly aggressive in nature content?
Poorly constructed, like you were talking about Eric being like really strict about like as far as like the movement quality of stuff that you guys show, like it's bad. It's not great information, especially since we're dealing with all mostly female clientele. A lot of it is just feeding into that same bullshit that's been going on, where a lot of us are trying to steer them away from that. And like I guess it's kind of like when your values don't align with the values that your place is putting out.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to be in an environment where everybody is collectively very concerned with being anal about stuff of that nature. This being said, there's a different kind of poor attention to detail with content, which we are all over each other about all the time. I can't make a typo without getting a text from Frank in 5 minutes. And that's an employee-employer relationship that we're totally cool with. We want everybody to be all over each other about the quality of the material that we're publishing. And so we are like, and every day right down to Eric, if Eric makes a typo, we're yelling across the room, try again. And so it's funny, but it's true. I mean, he watches it all day, every day. And so we are a little bit maniacal about the professionalism of the language we use and the way that we attack that, for sure. Sounds like you're not in an environment where that would fly, though.
Well, we don't really have the control over it. They've sort of outsourced it to another company, and then they're asking us to sort of step up and provide content, but then it's not being curated. So would your advice to be just like, don't provide the content, just do it on our own?
I would disengage from aligning myself with the business. And keep putting out good personal content.
Yeah, you have an account, right? I see it on 0 posts still.
I don't know what you're talking about. My Instagram is awesome, Frank.
You gotta do it, Kristen, though. Like seriously, like eventually if your integrity and your values don't align with who you're working with or for whatever, you've got to make a game plan to get out of there, because you're just not going to be happy in what you're doing until you can. Seriously. Been there, done that.
Stuff doesn't just change organically. You got to trust your gut on that front. Bitsy's right.
Sure. Thanks, guys.
Burm, burm.
Well, anything else? Any closing thoughts, questions, anything like that?
I have one closing question, and I'm really curious to ask it with Frank and Pete both in the room.
Yeah.
So, Pete, you said that there's very minimal, it sounds like, financial resources provided to CSP strength camps. If you had to budget like a considerable amount of money, it doesn't need to be like a bajillion dollars, but more than like a $10 boosted Facebook post, and this is the same question for you, Frank, what would it be and why? I'm curious if there's a difference between just between the two of you, like if it would even differ. Does that make sense?
Just solely marketing?
Like marketing or branding. Okay. Like what would be like the first thing or the one thing you two might bite on that would be worth your investment?
I personally would outsource the editing and production value of our content, because I think Facebook advertising is everything as far as just easy, affordable leads. I'd have the best produced content in our market, really clean videos. So like look at look at the production value of the stuff that Jordan Syatt's putting out these days,
Yep.
I'd go to that level. I'd invest right there because it's such a differentiator as far as the perceived quality of your material and your training and your services. The second thing I would do, if we're talking like big investments, I would really clean the shit out of our gym and invest in new equipment all the time. Just have really like high quality materials, because that's kind of hard to keep up with, and people seem to really care and appreciate it.
Yeah, he just answered it. I just coached.
No, Duffy, don't take the easy way out and agree with Pete.
Don't punk out.
It's not punking out.
Disagree with me.
I don't
Come on.
disagree with those things. I'm trying to think of a third thing that we could do. Like
Fight Pete right now.
We tried Facebook. I tried Facebook on my personal. I didn't know how to work it. Like I literally couldn't figure out the screen. And we read a bunch of different articles on how to do it. Didn't really make much of a difference for what we were doing.
No, we're gonna get better at it. We're gonna do it this week.
Okay. We're gonna do it this week.
I'm gonna report back on lead generation. We're gonna throw ourselves into it, but it's gonna be more video driven.
Well, I like the idea of the video, like the curating the video or having like just the video production quality enhanced. I do. That definitely wasn't what I thought you would say, I guess.
What did you think we were going to say?
Oh, I don't know if it was, I don't really know. I thought it'd probably be more like black and white. Maybe you would do like a branding initiative with, maybe just some CSP Strength Camp swag or so. I don't know. Like, I just didn't know it would be, and it makes sense because it aligns with what you were saying earlier, Pete, with like the experience. And if you can relate the experience in a cleaner format to someone who's not a part of the experience, then that definitely makes sense. And then I do think about like what Gary Vee does with like his daily content, like you mentioned earlier, and how it basically looks like, a Hollywood TV show, even though it's a 8-minute video clip or whatever it might be.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's all just about documenting experiences here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Thanks. I just didn't know if it was going to have a major difference between, the two of you.
No, we have enough kind of ongoing banter or just conversation that we don't really have like a start and stop of our strength camp strategic initiative discussions. It's an all day, every day, and then text messaging when we're not on the clock sort of deal. So, but it does come down to kind of a strategic content strategy as far as the media we put out, and then just making sure that clients feel like we're reinvesting in the space and buying new mats and getting the battle ropes they fought so hard to get. And just listening to your clients, I guess, is what it really is.
Yeah.
Ask for feedback and listen. Don't just kind of cherry pick what you want to apply.
Yeah. Outside of like equipment improvements, there hasn't been a single dollar put into anything else. It's just been all organically since then. So
yeah, I guess that was where I was going with the question is if you could or wanted to or did invest, money, where would it be? That was what Pete said. I didn't know.
Yeah, content creation for sure.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
How about you?
Me?
Yeah.
I might steal your idea of the video just because I'm doing everything from an iPhone. So I might invest in like Chris had like the stuff on the end of the last block of Strength Action about like the microphone and the tripod and kind of just enhancing that because we're not even kind of there yet. And then, I would probably get our turf deep scrubbed like, 5-6 times a year.
Sure. Yeah, we could all be better at that.
Yeah, but I think, like you're saying, being able to better enhance or transfer our customer experience is probably, anything that aligns with that is probably worth the investment.
Sure. Where the hell is Showdub?
He probably has to teach right now. He's hit or miss on these midday ones. So.
Anybody else before we wrap?
So, since you get a bit, I guess Frank's kind of doubled your strength camp numbers here. Have you done anything specific to like referrals or anything like that, other than just like upping the experience? Like a bring a buddy thing, or like incentivizing them to bring friends in, or has it been kind of just an organic thing of like Frank brightens the room and everybody wants to be there?
Strategic outreach to former clients. We've reactivated a number of clients.
Yeah.
And so typically when people leave, it's because they're no longer enamored with the experience, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, we fixed that problem, and then we got back in front of those people and we basically said, hey, we fixed that problem. Come try it for free for a session. Let us prove it. And it worked. I mean, he didn't find us 20 plus brand new people. He reactivated people who got to a point where they were no longer pleased with the training environment. And it took us too long to fix that problem. But once we did, we knew why people left. I mean, a quick survey of people who were opting out showed us that it was kind of a cultural issue. And so Frank got ahead of that. And I just gave him a series of emails. And I said, go ahead and start digging into these. Tell people you're here. Be boisterous. Be you. Encourage people to come in, try it for free for a session again, see what we've made a change here. And they all reactivated.
Okay.
The big thing for me the first couple of months was like just trying to gain the trust of the people that were currently there. So like if I can have my solid 15 to 20 people, like it'll build itself around that. Once they like appreciate what I'm doing, once they refer people in. Because on day one, I'm trying to over deliver the shit out of any new person. It helps because I'll have an intern with me too. So it's like, hey, if I'm bouncing around, I want you with this person the whole time. Make them feel welcomed. Like give them positive like critique with everything they do. So I think like they're part of the environment, and then all the anxiety is pretty much gone at that point.
Yeah, nothing but bright spots on day one.
Like for the most part, everyone that's come through here is pretty much signed up. That's tried the one thing, but now it's just like trying to expand on like Casey's point. It's like, all right, what's the next step? So,
gotcha.
We are going to get effective at Facebook advertising, though. That is an initiative on our to-do list.
Well, I tried to help Frank out one time. If you need some help, holler at me.
Look, I tried it too. I was in there the next day. I just couldn't figure out how to adjust it as we went.
Just fly me out, and I'll show you how to do it.
That was our answer to how we'd invest that money.
There we go.
Pro tip, don't use Delta. Pro tip.
Yeah, no shit.
That's crazy.
We good?
I think so. All right.
Businesses.
That was great.
I'm going to go pee.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Please.